We welcome once again Dr. Pedro Noguera to our annual NJPSA FEA NJASC Fall Conference. Today we heard a rousing, motivating, and inspiring presentation by him. And I just wanted to follow up with a few other points based upon what he said today. So, you talked about the bar. We don't raise the bar, that the bar should be accessible for everyone. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, and my point is that you don't lower the bar to make it accessible. That is that by making things easier, you really aren't helping kids, because ultimately kids have to be prepared for college and for life and careers. But the equity work is about recognizing where kids are when they're starting and then scaffolding to help them to achieve at higher standards, which starts by getting to know who they are, understand where the gaps in preparation might be, targeting those so that you can help them to gain the skills they need, but also building on the strengths. And I think that's one of the points that I see missing in many schools. We so often focus on the deficits, on what the needs are, on where they're not prepared, that we overlook all the things that kids do have. I'll give you an example. Many kids are older and are responsible for the younger siblings. They're demonstrating responsibility every day with those younger siblings. So they know about looking out for someone. They know about the importance of taking care of a younger sibling. How do you draw on that sentiment, to recognize that this child already demonstrates responsibility in one area of their life, and call them, okay, now we need to show the same kind of responsibility towards your work. When we affirm the strengths in children, we build the relationship. We also help to build their confidence, which makes them more willing to take on challenges. And for many kids, the work is more challenging. We also, if we want to make high standards accessible, need teachers who are really focused on evidence of learning, making sure that what they're doing is really reaching the needs of kids and not simply covering the material. And usually the best teachers are doing that. They're looking at student work, they're reteaching when kids don't get it. They are asking kids clearly, are you with me? And that's about teaching with a focus on evidence. And all of those are strategies that help to make high standards accessible for kids. And I could elaborate further, but that's, I think, a quick discussion of what it is.
In New Jersey, we have some of the most segregated school systems in the country,
right.
Even though we have a very high achievement rate overall. And you mentioned Abington, Pennsylvania, and Brockton, and the Eagle Academy. When you look across those schools, are there one or two points that you might be able to discuss that would help those of us who are working in schools where the achievement rate may not be as high as others in the state?
Well, I'll focus on leadership, since this is a leadership conference, and that is one of the distinguishing factors in all of the examples I presented today, is the role that the leader plays. In case of Abington, Amy Sickles, superintendent, has been a leader of leaders. It's interesting, she's been superintendent now for I think 17 years. She was a guidance counselor first. She approaches her work as a leader as a counselor, and so she's mentoring people around her all the time. So Abington is known as a place that produces leaders for other districts because they have a great farm system, but it's all leadership by example. When you look at the case of Eagle Academy, you see a leader, David Banks, who is moral leadership, and he's really exercising that kind of an example that young men need to see to understand what does it mean to be a responsible adult in the world today, and having that example infuse the school and everything they do. And then you look at a place like Brockton, where Sue Satchowitz was the principal for many years, and she showed a willingness to lead by listening to her staff, by really taking the time to get them on board, because she understood that she couldn't do it without her teachers. And the strength of her example is that even after she retired, the school even made more progress, because it wasn't about her, it was about her empowering the people around her. So in all three of those cases that I mentioned today, you see different examples of leadership, all that have the impact of furthering equity goals and making a difference for all kinds of kids.
And I think the last thing I wanted to mention is you talked about expectations for all students, and that students should feel as if they can be someone and be someone special,
right.
and get there.
Right.
So what kind advice do you have for us about that?
Well, a few years ago, I asked this while I was teaching at NYU. I asked my students, when did you first realize you're going to college? And some kids said kindergarten, and one kid said, I was going to college since my parents conceived me. And I said, how do you know? He said, because from that time on, my parents were planning for my preschool. They set up a college fund. They told me about all the things they were doing from the time my mother first knew she was pregnant. Well, some kids are on that pathway early on because of their parents. Some kids don't even think about college till 12th grade, if they do, right? And they're intimidated by the whole process because they don't understand financial aid, they don't understand how it works. We need to make sure that all kids are getting encouraged and getting exposed very early on, not simply to college, but to think about their futures, to think about how they can use their education to help themselves, help their families, their communities. I put it this way, that kids who are clear goals and on a path to somewhere make better decisions than kids who are going nowhere. One of my colleagues, Kristen Luker, did a study on teen pregnancy. The question she asked was, why are middle-class girls less likely to have babies as teenagers than low-income girls? And what she finds is the answer to that question is not really about sex. It's about your future aspirations. Kids who are going to college, young women, less likely to have babies as teenagers than girls who don't think they're going anywhere. And especially if they had parents or mothers who had babies as teenagers. So your future aspirations do have a very profound effect on the decisions you make right now. And so it's not good enough to just put the posters up telling kids to go to college. You actually have to plan with them. Okay, this is what it takes. You have to expand their horizons about what's possible, and you have to reinforce that throughout their education.
It's interesting. Yesterday we also, as you know, had Angela Duckworth join us. And she and some colleagues have recently looked at low-income students and their success in college, or do they stay in college? And she said it really didn't have anything to do with the grit or persistence or those skills. It was about social acceptance at college, and the fact that we should be preparing kids also to transition to college, to let them know what it's going to be like.
That's right.
And the kinds of skills they need in order to feel accepted once they get there.
That's right.
So that they stay.
And a lot of these things we knew, Lawrence Steinberg did research on a book called Beyond the Classroom, found kids who were involved in music and theater and sports do better than kids who were not involved. Well, what's going on? They have a sense of belonging, they have a sense of attachment. That works in college too. The kids who are building those social relationships, the kids who have a mentor who's advising them, those kids are on a pathway that's going to lead to graduation and success beyond. The kids who are intimidated, who don't even know if they fit in, a lot of times they get lost. Now, the other thing I would add, I'm not sure if she mentioned this, but a lot of the poor kids are working through school. And a lot of times just making ends meet becomes a challenge with persisting. And that, I think, is a reflection of the fact that we haven't invested enough in supporting students through college. In California right now, 1 out of 10 students in the California state system are homeless. College students. Hard to make it through when you're living in a car.
For sure. I'm glad you mentioned the arts. We're very involved here at NJPSA and FEA with several arts initiatives. One is Arts Ed Now, and we're trying to make sure that the arts are accessible to everyone. We have great levels of accessibility, but the participation rate could improve. And we do know that those who are involved will be more successful in a variety of different ways down the road.
That's right.
But we really appreciate your being with us. I think we would have been happy if you could have spoken all day because you're all so uplifting, and as you saw in the hallway, people walk away with such a good feeling of inspiration and motivation and just to continue and do the work and do it even better.
That's right. It's important work. It's not easy work, and that's why I wasn't being facetious at the beginning. I'm speaking to the most important people in the state. People who are leading our schools are doing work that is not acknowledged in terms of its importance, but it's so vital to the future. And so I really thank you for inviting me back.
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much.